Yes.
Is Fallen the GOAT IGL? That's one way of asking the question. Some people have simple yes and no's, so I've got my guests here ready to actually present where they rank Fallen all time. Maybe it is number one as the greatest IGL. Maybe it's number three. Maybe it's number two. Hell, maybe it's number 17. Hopefully not, because that's going to be an incredibly difficult case to make and will lead to, I'm assuming, at least 3 death threats. So I think we'll turn this over to our resident nutcase, Quackgear. Where would you put Fallen in the all-time GOAT IGL debate?
You know Bird from Sky. No, I'm joking. I think at first, okay. Who's the GOAT IGL? There's a couple of things, just so you know where I'm grounded in terms of values, what I'm sort of judging on. And there's sort of 4 things that I think speak to the credit of. I'll just whip out an obvious one. I think everybody watching probably has Kerrigan somebody somewhere in the upper levels of their GOAT debate for an IGL. So I'll just use that as a safe pick. Well, why do we think Kerrigan is so good? Well, it's longevity. He's been around for it's gonna be coming up on a decade of more or less constant top level play. It's a pure eye test. A lot of Kerrigan teams look very good. It's just like you're watching a prime Kerrigan team, you feel this is genius. You feel like he's able to outcall pretty much anybody else. It's replicability. One of the big things to speak towards Kerrigan is that he's done it with several teams. We're talking finding, pretty high level success with 2 face rosters. 3 depending on where you draw the line on what big success would be. A mouse roster, even the early TSM rosters as well. He was at a top level. And that sort of speaks to its credit. Those are very different rosters, and he still managed to do it. And outright success. Kerrigan has won quite a bit of stuff. So, on those 4 categories, well, who else can we put in here? Well, I think for eye test and outright success, Glaive is somebody who a lot of people are going to have in this top level. The Prime Astralis rosters were visibly very good at playing CS, revolutionizing the game. Outright success, it is probably the most successful roster of all time. So I think those make up my top 2, and I'll just get them out of the way very quickly. Then we sort of started to think, well, who's some other candidates? There's Fallen, who is important in this debate. And I'll just say right now, my standpoint is I'm putting him lower than I think most of you are going to put him. Because I can honestly find at least 2 people who pretty conclusively beat Fallen on these 4 categories. So number 1 is the most recent example. It's Apex. We go through this again. Eye test. That Vitality roster in this past season looked so good. It was pure genius. It's sheer dominance on the server. That is in-game leadership genius to find that. Longevity. We're coming up on 5 years of Apex being a caller. Vitality have pretty much constantly been a top 5, as definitely a top 10 roster in that time when he took over from Alex, which was 2020, I want to say, when Misuta came in. More or less constantly, he's kept Vitality at a high level. 5 years for an in-game leader to constantly stay at a top 5 level, or top 10 level if you want to stretch it with a couple of small dips, without getting cut. That's a really impressive longevity. Replicability. He's only been on Vitality, but he's won majors with 2 different cores. Like Apex and Zyvo are the only constants between Paris and Austin. Since then, they've added Flamesy, they've added Mezzy, and they've added Rops instead of Dupree, Spinks, and Magisk. And there's been a coach change in between that time as well, because he won 1 major with Zonic, and he won 1 major with Ixtas. Very fair candidate to win the Budapest major as well, which would only strengthen his position in this regard. And outright success last season. He's won so many things. Like, just since taking over as a caller, he has won, I think, it's up to 16 events, I think, by my account. 16 big events. That's not even counting, that they were pretty successful in 2020, but that's a different era.
I'm just going to chime in quickly. Just going to chime in, because this is the point where I think most people are on board. And as myself listening, I'm also... It's one of those things where maybe I would have some differences of opinion with you. I may start debating you, but I think everything you've said is reasonable. When we get to the next player that you've apparently you've got another one that's up here, the next caller, is where I feel maybe some people are going to start having some really deep feelings about this. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Who could you have as well up there? Like, who else could it possibly be?
And we're going to stay on that for a little bit, because now I'm going to make the case for Fallen on these categories. So where's Fallen on the eye test? Fallen's prime teams.
I just feel like he's got a Swedish guy for the final one.
I'll tell you, I wanted to put Pronax in here, but a certain
for
French guy
example.
told me why I shouldn't.
Put a
A certain
Swede in
French
there.
guy told me why I shouldn't. Fallen. I think Fallen's prime teams, the LG, the Luminosity teams, they look good. I've never watched one of those games and felt this is pure genius. I've watched these games and I've felt all of these guys are incredibly talented, but I've never seen like this is a crazy call from the crazy genius IGL, which won this round. I don't see that as often with these LED teams, and that might be controversial, but I just don't. Longevity. Fallen had a relatively brief peak as a caller. We're talking 2016, 2017. He won. Only 2016 he won majors, and he was up there for 2017. And that's pretty good longevity. But compared to somebody like Kerrigan or somebody like Apex, who have stayed at a top level for a very long time, doesn't look that impressive to me. After that, it's been a big drop off. MIBR was very disappointing for pretty much like anything post maybe the midpoint of 2018. Anything after that, very disappointing for MIBR and for Fallen-led MIBR teams. He moved on to Liquid, extremely disappointing. Like, even with some talented players, those rosters looked a bit weird. You'd think a genius IGL could salvage something out of it, but it was pretty horrible. And it's taken a while for this Furia team to start looking really good as well. And I don't think this Furia team is quite good enough to even be a big factor in this GOAT debate. So that's to come. If they win Budapest Major, it's possible. Well, yeah, then maybe I'll change my tune. But I can only go for what I see right now. Replicability, he did it once. He wasn't able to replicate it on Liquid. He's only just starting to be able to replicate it on Furia. For a long time, he wasn't able to replicate it after, FNX left that core. There's a couple of rosters still up there with, like, Phelps, I think was the roster. Phelps and Bolts. They've sort of went in and out. It's weird. But like without that big core, and especially without Cold Zera, hasn't really been replicated. And outright success. He's won 9 big events in that prime period with that prime Brazilian roster. He's won a couple more smaller ones with Furia, but we talk every time we mention them these past few Mondays, they've been pretty bad. So that's where I have Fallen on this. Is there anybody who can go above him? Yes, there is, and I want you to think about it. 3 seconds. It's Zeus. It's obviously Zeus to me. Zeus beats him on every metric. He beats him on every single metric of this. I think the eye test is obvious. I think Zeus teams can
So just to clarify, when you say he beats him, we're still talking about Counter-Strike, right? Because if we're not,
Yeah.
I could agree.
Physical altercation.
He's pretty. Yeah.
Yo, give me tickets. Yo, I'm there.
That's the proper midweek brawl, and that's next week. But no, we have just celebrity boxing match and Zeus versus Fallen streamed on the Kingt YouTube channel on pay-per-view. No, it's eye test. I think Zeus-led teams can look absolutely genius, and he's had some very strong pieces to do it with, but he's also had some pretty weak pieces to do it with, and he's managed to do it quite well. Longevity, again, we're talking the first Na'Vi roster with Guardian, the Gambit roster, which won a major and was successful even before that major win as well. As much as it might look like a flash in the pan, it was up there. And then he did it again with a simple Na'Vi roster in 2018, and I don't think they won anything in 2019. They were pretty bad, but that's when he was exiting. So the longevity is there. It's almost like Kerrigan-esque. 2014 to 2018, that's 4 years of more or less constant play despite switching teams. Replicability, again, different rosters, different cores. There's no common denominator between those Na'Vi rosters and the Gambit roster. He just did it again. And outright success, he's won a shit ton of events. Like he's won a crap load, which is up there with like Glaive. It's up there with Kerrigan in terms of the pure numbers. And it conclusively beats Fallen. He's got about twice as many big LAN wins as Fallen does, by my account. And that's, again, with at least 3 different cores in 2 Na'Vi rosters and 1 Gambit roster, including a major. So that's my case for Zeus in this ranking where I've put him, Fallen is 5th, Zeus is 4th. I think Apex is 3rd, and then Kerrigan and Glaive. That's sort of what you value, I think. But it's so that's my case. That's my case for Fallen. I don't think he's close.
Damn. Okay, Ted. In the show notes, I ascribed to you a role.
Sure.
You remember what that role was, right? It was
Yeah.
the voice of reason. Now, in this sense, it may also be considered the voice of the mass, because this is definitely not where most people stand on this topic. I don't think people have ever thought about it this deeply or tried to give Zeus this much credit, which is probably a part of why it's ended up here. But yeah, what's your gut reaction to that placing, especially just the Zeus part? The rest, I think, is more tolerable, but Zeus is the question.
You know what's the thing? I've always been somewhat of a fan of what Zeus was doing on Na'Vi and Gambit, and I still remember I was still getting into Counter-Strike in like 2016. So when he won that major in Krakow in 2017, I experienced it and I loved it. I love the story how, you know, he gets removed out of Na'Vi because he can't lead him to big events, and then he wins one, and then he goes back over to Na'Vi. I've never thought about him being a better IGL than Fallen, though. I liked him. I very much liked him. And you know what? I'm not one of those guys that is going to come out and say Fallen is the greatest in-game leader of all time. But I think when you're talking about an in-game leader, we should talk about a captain. We should talk about behavior. We should talk about wins as well. I'm not going to go on the crazy train and say Fallen is a better IGL and a greater IGL than Apex or Kerrigan or Glaive. I think all of us should probably be able to agree that those are the 3 greatest. When you're talking CSGO and CS2 combined, right? Maybe Apex doesn't fall into the top 3 if you're talking CSGO only. He actually just doesn't, right? And if you're talking CS2 only, Glaive is nowhere to be spotted. But if we're talking modern Counter-Strike history, so since, let's say, 2012,
we'll call it since the major era, like realistically, like we can give NIP some credit. We'll say CSGO onwards, but realistically, the major era is the modern.
Exists is 6th, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got Glaive, Kerrigan, and Apex, and how you're gonna put them from 1 to 3 is completely up to you. I don't see how Fallen is gonna be a worse IGL than Zeus, even though I'm not the biggest fan. So for me, Fallen has been. I agree with what was said about him having a short amount of success or just over a short period of time. I agree with that, because when you think about the amount of majors that he won, they were in the same year. So yeah, I mean, it's still impressive that he did it. I still think he did have some type of longevity to him, though, right? Because between ESL 1 Cattle 2015, when he was still on Keith Stars, and I Am Cattle 2019, this is 10 majors, he made playoffs in all of them. I think Fallen was consistently one of the better IGLs out there. Maybe he wasn't winning all the trophies, but he was still leading a really good team. And there was a lot of drama happening on the team. And again, it's going to be difficult to evaluate, because you'll say, well, Cold Zero was the best player in the world at the time. So is Fallen really a great IGL? Well, in my opinion, if you were able to make someone the greatest player, so they weren't clearly the best player in the world before they jumped on a team with you, then you did something right as a leader to lead that player towards developing in such a way. So I guess that's why a lot of people are not giving that credit to Zeus for Simple, right? Because we already knew that Simple was one of the best in the world when he went over to Na'Vi. So you've never heard anyone say, well, Simple was that good because of that IGL. No, it was his team is that good because of Simple. I think Cold Zero was a magician, but a lot of the time people would associate the success of the Brazilian teams with Fallen. And I think for me, the most impressive thing in his case has been the fact that I think he's always been really good at leading. He's not just an IGO, he's a captain, right? So he's always been really good at leading. He's always been really good at being the mediator. For goodness sake, he's put an entire nation, an entire country on his shoulders and just taught half of the scene in Brazil how to play Counter-Strike. So I do believe that he's great. I do believe that he deserves some praise. I still believe it's absolutely delusional to say that he's a top 3 of all time or the number 1 of all time. No, he's not the greatest IGL out there. But no, he's not a worse IGL than Zeus. That's for sure. Again, Zeus had that run with Gambit. They couldn't replicate it. So I'm just going to put the argument like this. If we're giving that to Zeus, I know the person I'm going to mention now has not won as many trophies as him, but if we're using the major argument, well, James got a major as well. He won a fluke major, just the same as Gambit did. Why are we not bringing him on that conversation? And then Zeus went right back to Na'Vi, where he kept on winning trophies, but then he had Simple on the lineup. And I agree, he's a great leader. I'd still put him ahead of, I don't know, I'd still put him ahead of many other people. I'd still put him in the top 7, top 8 probably. But yeah, I just think Fallen's longevity of his career, the amount of time he's spent being part of Tier 1, and the fact that he's still up to this date able to gather up a team that is capable of being a top 10 team and capable of being a dark horse and going into playoffs and potentially even winning events and doing so even without the OPE, I think that's hella impressive. And honestly, the fact that he was an OPing IGL, for in my book, bonus points, because I think it's always been a really difficult thing being able to keep up with your own individual performance and then leading the team in an efficient way. People tend to say that, it's a bit of a cheat code because you're calling around how you're comfortable with playing. Well, he's IGLing now as a rifler and a support player, and he's still doing fine. So I think it's just he's always been very impressive. He's always been trying to be ahead of the curve in a way. But yeah, I'd say that it's absolutely crazy to say that Zeus is a better IGL than him. But I like the argument. I like the conversation.
Let's get awkward here. I'm
Sure.
going to make the devil's advocate. I'm going to play the Brazilian. Now, I'm not going to do the accent. We all know the accent. You can hear it in your head right now, right? But I'm not going to try and imitate it because that'd be a step too far. Just because I can't do it very well. If I could do it well, I would, but I can't. Quack. The IGL. It's only one player, right?
Well, yeah. I'll always make the
just
case
answer
that
the question
it's
simply. Do not give me a 10-minute lecture every time I ask you the question. Just yes or no. It's one player, right?
Yeah.
How many eyes are there in team? Just keep answering the questions very simply, please.
There are 0 eyes in team.
How many are there in individual brilliance?
I think 4, 5.
5. There are 5 eyes in individual brilliance. Now, of all the IGLs you've noted, you have completely ignored their ability to contribute to winning games. In terms of their ability to shoot the damn guns, which, as a member of a team in Counter-Strike who has individual responsibilities and, honestly, could do with a little bit of individual brilliance, none of these guys are even remotely comparable to 2016, 2017 Fallen. This guy was a top 6 player for 2 years. Now, 6 is the worst he finished in the HLTV rankings. He was actually 4th in 2016, or 2nd rather. Wait, 2nd? Sometimes they're wrong.
Yeah, he was 2nd.
He should have been 4th. I've had my petty disputes with HLTV's rankings for a long time. But anyway, 2nd in 2016, which even crazier, right? Because he is calling this team. Have you ever interviewed an IGL, Quack? And you ever asked them, especially one who transitions to the role, have you ever asked them, why can't you maintain your individual brilliance? Have you ever asked them that question?
I've never asked that question, no.
See, I do every time. And every single time they give me the same answer. They go, man, it's basically impossible. How am I supposed to prep all these demos and all these opponents, go through the strats with my team, go through it with them one-to-one, with me, him, and the coach, talk about how exactly we want to do this, how we want to react, how we want to build our game plan, and still find time to deathmatch, and still find time to actually refine my mechanics, stay on top of it, and especially in Fallen's case, play some of the most difficult and explosive styles of Counter-Strike possible. He was an incredibly, flick-heavy combat AWPer. He needed to be in the thick of it, he needed to make plays, and he landed his shots. How are you supposed to do all of that while still being the IGL of the team? Lest we forget, this team isn't just another team. This isn't just a team that kind of showed up, played some CS, and left. This is a team that was the first step in the sort of CT meta revolution that happened between them and to the end of the Astralis era that brought us into this new aggressive style in terms of how you set up your players, your star players, how to make them useful and proactive, and then also the way you use util to set all that up. Fallen led that first charge. Still was an individually brilliant player. The case for Fallen is quite simple. Not only did he do it across different eras, with different teams, he's now winning again as a rifler. He's done it with different versions of himself. He hasn't just rebuilt the roster, he's rebuilt the man. No other IGL has done that. No other IGL has even come close. Apex is still a near star rifle on his teams. He's still a hard entry, but then he's playing Connector and Mirage. He's still given himself the same luxuries he was given by his IGLs in the past. None have done it quite the way Fallen has. I think it's a pretty damn good case. As an individual player, not just some abstract thought, this collective sort of set of strategies. As a player on the server, doing both, he's been fantastic.
I mean, look, yeah, he is fantastic. That's why he's 5th. That's why he is still up here in this list, because he is brilliant. He's amazing. But I think, as you're talking about as well, it's a team effort. There's no I in team. It is also not just the work of the IGL, which we're seeing it. We're seeing we see a lot of different contributions from different players, and it differs from team to team, I think. And I think out of the 5 I listed, I think Fallen is the one who has reaped the most success out of help from the rest of his team.
Yeah, so I think to explain this one, because this is something you talked about when we discussed the concept of this sort of show.
Yeah.
So I'm going to really need a breakdown of how he has this magical amount of help, because lest we forget, there's no one in his Brazilian teams who's gone on to be a great leader, great thinker. Hell, honestly, even great player. No one outside of his Brazilian, has gone Brazilian and won. I mean, coldzera even tried to join FaZe and the magical promised land of Karrigan. Well, Nico, but that didn't work. So tell me how much help he got, and from which genius?
I'll give a caveat here. These things, a lot of this you have to judge on what people say outwards in interviews, what they say. This is something you can't watch in a demo. So a lot of it is dependent on, maybe Twists was the true mastermind behind the Antwerp major win, and we just nobody said so, and therefore it isn't. But going off what has been said, coldzera did a lot tactically on those Brazilian teams. In the overtime winning Columbus, coldzera was the IGL. That's what Fallen said in the post-game interview. He said coldzera took over the calls to take the map over the line to win Columbus. After, a bout of poor results in 2018, in mid-2018, coldzera was the one who took over the leadership. And yeah, they didn't find much more success. Like I said, it was very disappointing after that. coldzera did take over the IGL role from Fallen in 2018. These are the players that are very vocal. Even now, he's finding success on Furia. It was quite poor before. Yekindar came in. A player we know is extremely vocal, comes with a lot of ideas, was doing a lot at the time. At one point was the caller in Liquid, but he was also a very big secondary voice next to Nitro and next to Jame on those teams. Now, I also know that that's also been his downfall sometimes in some of these teams, but he has a lot of support from these teams. And I look past these other ones, and I don't get anything like that from the first Navi roster. Like, I don't think Guardian or Edward or Seized were this vocal kinds of players, as far as I know. I don't think, look, you can make the case that there's some of that on the Gambit rosters. Several of those players have gone on to be IGLs, Hobbit, Adren. I think Mo is a coach at the moment. Like, there's some elements of that, which probably does exist. Second Navi roster, Simple is not that kind of player. Electronic has tried to become an in-game leader, but I don't think there was ever a conversation about that before.
You didn't say that the guy had to be successful in IGL afterwards. coldzera was a dumpster fire of an IGL.
Yep.
So just by that same sort of logic, Electronic was vocal. Have you ever seen Simple shut up on a game?
We're just speculating as hell.
No, this is pure
We are speculating. We are
speculating. That's the ultimate BS. It's like
out of these 5 people,
help him with calling pistol rounds in 2017 on the city side of Overpass. How the hell do I know?
That's what I mean. As far as we know, out of these 5 people, Fallen is the one guy who has said, I had a lot of help from this guy. He's the one guy who said that.
Karrigan has said it as well.
He's a humble
Karrigan has
king.
said it as well. Karrigan said it about Nico. What about that?
About Nico?
Yeah, he said Twist is the first guy that's secondary calling like me since Nico.
Then maybe Karrigan gets docked beneath
Nico
Glaive in that case.
a lot. And Nico was calling some of the pistol rounds as well.
This is more of a secondary. That's why I didn't bring it up in the first place.
It's a very tenuous place to try and fight from. Like, that is, you've built a fort out of sand.
For me, it's the sprinkles on top. For me,
are we gonna give slander to in-game leaders and discredit their impact on the scene and their achievements because they had good teammates? Like, are you supposed to just carry 4 selfless, soulless bodies? Like just zombies in order to be considered a good in-game leader if you win an event. I don't think you should be, right? The fact that you had good teammates is actually it's complimentary. It shows that you were able to bring the best out of your teammates and they were able to bring the best out of you. It's not more impressive when you had shit teammates on the team and if people didn't talk. Like, I mean, maybe if you're simple, it is more impressive because you were doing all of that with Flamey and Edward, sure. But when you're an in-game leader, it's kind of like, I'm not going to just look at Apex, for example, and say, well, you know what, he's lesser of an IGL now because I think Zywa was really good this year, or I think Flames was really good that year, or someone else was, or he had Robs or whatever.
There's elements of individual play that obviously have to be like talked about for me when I talk about an IGL and stuff like that. But no, when it comes to who the second caller was, I'm not factoring that in. And if you want me to, I can slander every IGL under the sun in terms of, that guy's vocal. That guy probably called something. That guy's what it is. I mean, Device has an entire book of prep on every opponent buff. Why are we giving Glaive so much credit? You know what I mean?
Flames,
like, I can do that for every IGL.
When he wanted to go to the loo alone. Apex didn't have to tell him that he wants to go to the loo. He could say that himself.
You see, that's a treacherous path to tread, because it very quickly leads to everyone getting absolutely wrecked. Like, we're just destroying everyone.
In the end, I think it does matter to a degree, because you also hear this stuff when you have teams go from good teams to great teams. A lot of the time you often talk about who are the other voices coming into the team. Like this Vitality roster we just talked about, one of the big things people talk, like the Vitality players will talk about, is that Rops, not necessarily tactical ideas, but like he brings a lot of vibes. And it's a different kind of utility as a person. And then you sort of start to ask, well, okay, so let's say if it was still Spinks, how many of those 7 straight trophies would they, or 7, I think it was 7 straight trophies would they have won? Well, if that's a question mark, then by definition, that Rop's personality impact has real impact. So then you can sort of extrapolate that to, well, okay, so if there's a second caller who, according to the in-game leader, made a big difference, was a key part in winning one of the 2 majors he has, then in my mind, I'm questioning, well, would he even have won that major if that player wasn't there? And not just individually, but like that person was there. That person, that voice in TeamSpeak, would he even have won that major if he wasn't there? I don't know. Can I still give him the same credits?
Pause right there. You don't know. You can again,
but it's a question mark which is only open because Fallen said that.
You know, pull everything apart.
You know what's the thing?
If I removed this player from that 5-man roster, would that rhinoceros have been shot in Africa? Like, what are we talking about? Like, you can't just rewrite history off that fact.
Yeah, imagine if Barcelona didn't have Messi and Iniesta and Xavi. We're still referring to Carlos Puyol as one of the greatest captains in Spanish football, right? And just asking,
equivalent question, yeah.
Would he win Champions League? He probably wouldn't have had as many trophies as he does. So that means he's not as great as a captain. Was Sergio Ramos a great captain? Well, he had Cristiano Ronaldo, so no way he was a great captain.
No, of course you can't quite do that, but the conversation is only opened up because Fallen goes out to say Coldzera did this sort of heavy lifting. Can I give Fallen the same credit that I do to these other IGLs who, as far as I know, did 100% of the work when he did 80% of the work?
No,
I mean,
can I still do that?
But you can't make this sort of connection. You can't call it 20% of the work by itself. You're again doing the classic like scrub
numbers
thing,
pulled out of thin air. If it's 199,
my point is you're just talking about random crap. Really, at that point, you're just like he may have called something. Was he the leader of the team? No. Did he call 90% of the strats? No. Did he off the server lead the roster and take them from who they were as people to actual champions? No. This is what we know. You have just taken a flyer on a portion of the strats being caused by someone else. We can do that for every team. It would be redundant. It would be absolutely redundant.
A direct quote from Fallen. Coldzera was calling in OT in the post-MLG Columbus interview. Another Coldzera interview. I'm taking over the in-game leader role in 2018.
So what? He empowered a player in an OT. A guy had a good idea and he let him talk. He didn't egotistically slap him in the face, then at the end of the day go, I do everything, please fellate me, audience of great admirers. He did something slightly humble, and now you're going to try and rip apart his entire career off the back of it.
If he's more humble than the other 4 candidates on this list, all credit to him. That's docking him for me. He shouldn't have been. He should have been saying it was all me. That's what he should have been saying.
What the hell? Right, well,
like a true leader.
Ted, you're the voice of reason. I've tried to make... I don't even necessarily believe that case I just made. I do not actually have Fallen the GOAT. I just made a case for Fallen the GOAT.
Sure.
What do you think is actually more reasonable then? GOAT or fifth?
I think... Jesus. So much BS has been said that I actually forgot a big part of what you said. You know what?
BS?
But, yeah.
Five eyes, man. Individual brilliance. 5 eyes.
Right. Yeah. So I think this is a good argument. I think it is a good argument that individually he was very good. I believe that to be true. But also you need to have it in as the asterisk of none of the other guys were opers as well, right? So again, you're playing a guessing game. Again, he was revolutionary, but I could say, well, Apex, even though it wasn't when he was an IGL, he was a top 20 player twice. Glaive was a top 20 player while he was an in-game leader. Karrigan's never been, bless him, probably never will be. But the thing is, the fact that you were good individually is a bit of a bonus, but I don't think it's enough for him to catch up with all the achievements that the rest that we've put above him have over him, right? And in the modern era of Counter-Strike, this is another thing that we need to have in mind. And I think it's a really touchy topic because it's really difficult when you're comparing different eras of an esport because it just develops so quickly and you're trying to say something now means more than something back in the days. No, they probably mean the same thing, but still, in-game leaders nowadays are doing a lot more prep. And the game is a lot more intense, and the level is a lot higher than it was 10 years ago. And by that, I don't mean it wasn't impressive what Fallen was doing individually. I still think it was impressive. But when you're asking that questions to in-game leaders, how are you able to keep up with all the vetoes and do all the prep and all of that and all of this and have time for your own individual performance? Nowadays, they will tell you it's impossible to keep up with all of that and still practice individually. Back in the days, people were not doing as much prep. Back in the days, people were not looking into the demos as much. They were not spending as much time delving down. So they had a little bit more time to be focused on their individual game. And Counter-Strike in general was a lot more about calling on the feel for the game, right? Just going with the flow during a game a lot of the time. So I think he was very good at it. I think he was hyper intelligent, but I don't really believe that this alone, the fact that he was individually better than some of those guys maybe for a couple years as the Oper, is a big enough argument for him to be considered the greatest IGL in the world. Maybe if he was the best Oper in CS:GO and he was an IGL, then you could say that. But you could go into the list of who are the best Opers in CS:GO, and he wouldn't probably even make the top 10. And for me, that's enough of an argument. Maybe he'd be on the outskirts of it, but I don't think he makes the top 10. Or probably maybe not. If he does, it's like 9, 10 place. Yeah, you get the idea.
If you try to make the list just off the top of your head, you'll probably get to like 6 or 7 before you have to think about Fallen. But if you actually go back and did the check, you'd find something.
Yeah, if Device was an IGL and he had won 4 majors with Astralis, then he would definitely be the greatest in-game leader of all time. And then you could bring out the individual factor and say, well, he was great. I still think we can bring out that factor for Glaive as well. Glaive was famous with being the best fragging in-game leader while Astralis were in their prime era. So I don't think Fallen's been the only in-game leader to be good individually. I think considering Glaive wasn't an Oper and he was still able to make top 10, this is equally, if not even more impressive. So yeah, at least to surpass Glaive, I'm not really buying it. To be fair, I'm not really buying it for either Apex or Karrigan either, but I can see the argument a little bit more, especially with Karrigan. But yeah, I still think he's number 4.
I think the individual argument is a slippery slope because if we go back to one of my favorite years in Counter-Strike, 2020, that would put Nico and BlameF as the best 2 IGLs of the year because they won events while being drastically more individually better than the other callers, if you make that argument. It's just a slippery slope because then you start to feel like, well, if BlameF is literally 120 rated while winning an event in 2020, while what Glaive is 102,
but he won individual performance IGL event if you wanted to. If you weighted it that heavily,
for the year. I mean for the year. I mean,
there is a difference between winning a Blast Studio event and winning a major. Though,
yeah,
right?
like I also
there's a big difference.
I also didn't say it was the main reason. Like we're talking about, I still had 3 years.
I remember the teams they had to play in order to win that, but they didn't have to play the best teams in the world. Yeah.
It's a slippery slope, and it's like you said with Glaive. I don't think Glaive gets a big buff in his in-game leadership because he was able to hit top 10 on the HLTV ranking, as you know, I'm sure you're going to mention, Kingt. I don't think that speaks too much to him because that's, in a way, it's not his job. For most callers, it's not his job to play that well individually. When you're the Opera, it's a different story. I don't think it credits them that much. I think it's like your job is to be the in-game leader. Do that, and that's what I'm going to judge you on. If you can frag outside of that, if that's what you need to perform in your team, if you're the Opera, you need that to happen. Good on you. I'm not going to give you bonus points as an in-game leader because you were able to do that, in my opinion.
I mean, you should give him bonus points if he's able to
Yeah,
do
there
that.
should
There's just
be.
not enough bonus points
You
to
are
overshadow
you
four
are one of the
majors.
5 players on the team. Not being a bum
Yeah.
is a good thing,
Yeah, you should
Oh yeah,
give
it's
him
absolutely a
bonus
good
points.
thing.
and it should
If I'm
count to
judging
your
your
credit.
in-game leadership, I'm not gonna give you bonus points on
it's
your
kinda
in-game
like-
leadership for that.
No, it should be a bonus though,
It is.
right? Because you're able to be a good
buff.
IGL while
What?
fragging. You're just jumping from extremity to extremity.
I am, but this is the same thing as asking
That's
who's the
not the
best
way.
opper. If you're asking who's the best opper, is it the best who at opping, or is it the best more well-rounded player? This is a debate we've had this year because Zybu wasn't opping as much. Is it the best at opping, or is it the best player who is an opper? Because that's two different debates, and it's the same thing for in-game leader. Who's the best player who is an IGL? Fallen gets bonus points for individual. Is he the best in-game leader at being an IGL? I don't give any credit of whether he's 120 or 1.0. Doesn't really matter for me.
Damn. Well, we'll let chat decide.
It's two different skills we're judging.
We'll also let the comments decide when this section of the video goes up. Yeah, I'm sure, Quack, you're going to be very happy with the reaction, as always.
What?
I expect to see you in the
I've
comments
already
defending
read a
your take.
genius
It's
comment, by the way.
it's obviously election fraud because you have weaponized the Brazilian fan base against me. So I'm the true winner.
I'll do it every time. I don't care.